Welcome everyone to the webinar about a recent book, which is Developer's Guide to an MSIX. So before that, let me give some context of where we are with this MSIX and what is the agenda for today. And to start with MSIX, it has been like over 3 years that Microsoft introduced this technology and as the next gen installation technology. And there are a few folks who have successfully moved to MSIX or started their journey with MSIX, or whenever they picked up new projects with MSIX, they start with started with MSIX. But then there is still a substantial set of vendors who are yet to move to MSIX, right? And some vendors are in a flux to either move to MSIX or not. Should I be focusing my entire resources on development and testing of my app, or should I be focusing on the deployment technology? And is it worth it? Is the investment really worth it? We get a lot of these questions, and we have been working on InstallShield for several years, trying to solve all the deployment problems for our customers. And these are the questions we run into day in, day out. So we thought we'd like to share these experiences with you. We then work closely with this person, Tim Mangan here, a part of our panelists today, a renowned expert in application packaging and having tons of experience in application packaging space. And we have our engineering members from our engineering team work with him on coming up with this book called A Developer's Guide to MSIX. So in today's webinar, we will discuss about how with the authors, what is covered in the book and who is it meant for, and more importantly, how will the book actually help you, making the move to MSI. So before we get into the topic, so let me start, introducing the authors. I welcome, Tim Mangan. Thanks a lot, Tim, for joining us today and working with us in writing this book, Developer's Guide to MSIX. And for those who don't know Tim, Tim is a renowned expert in application packaging with several years of experience in MSI, scripting technologies, or AppV, to more importantly, and then now MSIX. Thanks, Tim, and welcome. And then we have Hassanul Banna, who is one of our lead developers in InstallShield, who works at Revenera. He has contributed a lot to this book. And then we also are joined by, Kiran Mantaki, product manager for Admin Studio, at Flexera, our sister company to Revenera. And, thanks a lot, Kiran, for joining us today. And Kiran has, several years of experience working with Admin Studio on the enterprise side, working with customers, and, also answering a lot of these questions on MSIX. And
thanks for having me.
Yep. Thanks, Kiran. Thanks for joining us today. And last but not least, we also have Vara Prasad, who is development manager for InstallShield at Revenera, who has a lot of experience working with InstallShield and development of C++ applications. Thanks a lot, Vara. And others, thanks a lot for being here with the audience and trying to answer their questions on MSIX. So without much ado, let's get started with the big elephant in the room. Let's start with Tim. Tim, can you give us some insights on why you thought this book was required?
Well, I'm going to start by assuming that the audience kind of knows why MSIX is important, and if they're here, they're sort of interested in that. The reason we thought this book was necessary was that there's a lot of work that might need to be done to take existing products that were built for these other frameworks, whether it was Win32, .NET Framework, or even UWP, and getting those things running inside the MSIX container. There are some fundamental things you need to look at and figure out what to do. So we wanted to put something together that really acted as a little bit of a project spreadsheet for you. Of here are the activities of things that you need to look at and see, do you have this thing? Not every product has everything that needs perhaps a little tweaking to get it to work properly in this brand new world. But some people do. And so we take you through that process of just, here's something you might need to think about. Do you have this? If you do, here's how you recognize whether you have it, and here's what you have to do about it. And that's really the focus of the book, is to sort of guide you through that whole hoarding process with being able to get things to work inside this wonderful new containerized environment.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Jim. So let's, Kiran, so the book primarily says it's a, developer's guide to MSIX, and you join us with a lot of experience, talking to people and working with people on the enterprise side. So is this book strictly only for, developers or software vendors, or is there anything for application packages in general about the technology?
Yeah, while this book is primarily focused for the developers, especially for somebody who is either thinking about moving to MSIX or in the planning phase or in the middle of MSIX, let's say they're in the middle of transition from their legacy Win32 packages, like MSI or EXE. While the book is primarily focused for those developers, it gets into a lot of aspects of MSIX where we explain, hey, let's say you have a COM component in your traditional package, the package that you have today. How do you deal with these things when you've moved to MSIX? How do you make sure this thing works in MSIX? So all of those details are going to help developers a lot for smooth transition, but it also serves as an excellent resource for IT professionals or packaging engineers. I generally take this example. Now, if you're a packaging engineer, it may not be required for you to know every table in the MSI database. It is not required for you to know the content of each table. But just imagine if you know all that information, the comfort level that you would have when you're working on a package. It could be for customization or anything like that. So if I take that example, now compare it with MSIX. Now imagine you know everything that the manifest file of MSIX contains, what each tags mean, how do they convert to the functionality of the package when it is installed and when the application is launched and all of that. Now all that knowledge is going to really help you a lot as a package engineer or an IT professional to deal with your migration projects that you might start seeing pretty soon. So bottom line, what I'm trying to say is this book, I would say, is equally beneficial for both developers and IT professionals. So I would like to really encourage even the IT professionals and packaging engineers to have to read this book and don't think this book is purely meant for developers.
It's nice. It's good to know. So back to Tim actually to talk about once again about MSIX in general. I know you have mentioned already, Tim, that you would assume that most people on this meeting would probably already know why MSIX, but it's always fair to assume that we have a few joiners here who probably have heard MSIX for the first time. So can you give us a quick recap about what your thoughts on why MSIX, right? So in your opinion, and maybe you share some of your experience as well.
Sure. Happy to do that. So, when I look at MSIX, I view it as sort of a generational change of what Microsoft is doing. This is on par with going from building applications for DOS to building applications for Windows, or from going from the old unmanaged code and WinForms into the .NET framework. Moving from where we are today into this new environment of running software inside a container, and the newer things that Microsoft is wanting to do in the future for how to build and what the SDKs look like that developers use. Those are all things that are just fundamentally a humongous change. One that doesn't happen overnight, right? I recall being on the Microsoft campus for the launch of .NET Framework in 2001. Right? And there was code available. Some people started building things, but it took maybe 5 years for that to become the predominant way that companies built applications for the Windows environment. And this will be the same sort of generational change here. The biggest advantage for a software company in delivering their products of running inside this container, and this is one I don't think Microsoft necessarily highlights enough, but that biggest advantage is that when that thing goes down, other things on the system can't mess with it. And just from the perspective of your own help desk for customers calling in, it's going to change the nature of those calls. Customers won't be calling in because my software is not working and they have to spend a couple hours in figuring out what else happened on the system that broke it. Instead, that customer calls in with a problem. It's because there is a problem with your software, and you can focus directly on the things that you need to fix. So it's going to change that model of how you interact with those customers and the type of support that you need to provide and allow you to focus on your business. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons that any software developer should be interested in getting into this new world.
Thanks, Tim. If I may ask a follow-up question to you, on that, Tim. So, Microsoft keeps saying that, there's, additional security benefits to, using MSIX. Do you want to shed some light on, how is MSIX more, secure, compared to a traditional deployment type?
The security aspect, I mean, there's a wide variety of different ways that you can kind of go at that question. I mean, the fact that things are now digitally signed and if we provide a little more trust in the thing that you're delivering to the customer is part of it. Running inside that container and that your software itself can't get modified by anything external is part of that. If something did happen, I mean, we were in the AppV world, we were always very cautious about not talking about AppV as a security solution. But the fact that you're running in a containerized environment means that if something did happen to your software, it's less likely, not impossible, but less likely to leak out and cause additional issues. And so all of these things are things that just improve the security posture of the system that's running that software. And that's becoming more and more important today to try to do as much of that as possible. Going from the old days of Windows where you were basically the root admin no matter what you do and providing separation of functionality and all of those things and having session based security that happens with individual users. Moving that to the application level really is that next step and making sure that these things are secured and they run independently and they can't mess up other things on the system.
Yep, that makes total sense, Tim. Thank you. And let me ask, Banna here, who is our lead developer on, Install Shield. So, Banna, we have, several questions, coming in generally, about, how do I use this feature in MSIX and whatnot. But, customers are in this constant confusion about, how to actually make this transition, right? So I have already, spent, years of effort into building an installer. It could be an MSI, or it could be a, grand bootstrapper that has an MSI of MSIs, or, a setup of MSIs or various other setups, right? Now, the biggest challenge that we, see from our, users is that, I have spent already a lot of effort in building these and getting them to a stage where they are now, right? Now, I have to now make another transition to MSIX. So does the book have anything to cover, with respect to, customers who are, willing to make the transition, not for a new project, but, who have already existing installers which are built on MSI or, Setup EXE, right? Is there anything in the book that can, shed some light on, how, people can actually migrate to MSIX in an easier way?
Yeah. Yes, Venkat. 1 second. Yes, Venkat. Actually, this book, a developer's guide to MSI's book, extensively covers on how to migrate the existing installer to an MSI's package. Actually, this book helps you to assess the existing installer to know what the installer does other than copying the payload files or registry. Also, this book guide you to build the corresponding functionalities in the MSI's package. Like we know, right, in traditional installer, we do different way to register file type associations or deploy Windows services or to register COM component. All these things we have to do differently in MSI's package. Especially chapter 4 talks about how to access existing installer and how to build all these things using MSI's package extensions. So also this book covers how to assess the application runtime, especially some application we have seen it creates log files inside a installation folder, and as Tim mentioned previously, we are not allowed to modify the installation folder. It is protected one. So this book also covers how to handle such kind of things, by modifying the application code or without modifying, with using the platform support framework handle. And this book also covers, we have seen in existing installer, it'll have dependency with some third-party application, or it have dependency with the .NET framework or VC runtime. How to handle all those things, kinds of dependency and prerequisites in MSI's package. Also, we have seen a lot of tools are there which reads MSI's existing installer and migrate to them to the MSI's package automatically by going through the MSI's table or the project file table. So these books helps you to assess whether all the transitions happen properly. We are covering all those things, how it is handled in the existing installer and how it is going to be in the MSIX manifest. Other than that, this book covers the schema of manifest in detail, such as the syntax of what is allowed as the value of an attribute, and this will help the developers to try different option other than whatever the tool initially set in the manifest. Other than this book cover how MSIX handle the updates, like MSIX having its own update handle mechanism. In traditional installer or traditional application have their own framework to handle update of their application. But in case of MSIX come with their own framework. We just only need to set some attributes and we need to update the links. And this book will be a good reference and a guide to who are planning to migrate their existing installer to an MSIX package.
Right. Thanks a lot, Bala. It's good to know that there is something that would help if if I made my mind to actually move to MSIX. There's something in the book for me to make the decision easier. Thank you. So let me, talk to Vara now and ask a couple of questions about his experiences in co-authoring this book. And there's so many people who has invested a lot of time in building their installers, and there are questions which come: why should I actually focus on this, where I can actually focus on my core app, development, right? So if there are folks with us, who would not want to move to MSIX in the near future, is there anything in the book, Vara, that would help people just to understand the technology?
Yeah, Venkat. First thing I would like to highlight is Microsoft invested in this technology. So, and they say this will be the future file format for packaged apps. And as well, they're not working actively on MSI features anymore. Apart from that, as Tim said, moving to MSIX has a lot of benefits compared to traditional package. And very recently, Mozilla as well came up with Firefox in MSIX format, and that can be downloaded from App Store as well. So, to me, it looks like things are moving in the right direction for MSIX. And so I understand you don't have plans to move to MSIX at this point, but that might change in the future. When that happens, you should be ready to take up the challenge. So I would recommend to go through this book now, so that would give you a lot of insights and heads up for you to move to MSIX. And with that, you should be able to plan your app migration as soon as possible. That's all.
Right. Thank you. So, just catching on that. Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
No, I was just trying to add to what I was saying. Like the way you started, Venkat. It's been more than 3 years. MSIX is launched, And also taking example from what Tim said, that .NET took about 5 years where it started moving into mainstream, right? I think this is maybe the time where even if you don't have plans to move to MSIX, maybe you want to change your plan and start looking at, or start considering moving to MSIX. And that's where I see this book will be an excellent source, because that really helps you to assess your current packages. And that kind of gives you a good understanding as to where do you stand with respect to your migration. And I think that book could also help you on, making that plan more practical. Because that actually gets into your current package, will help you understand, hey, these are the components which you can right away move, or these are the components that you have to make some code changes and all of that. So I think that overall, even for building up the plan, this book would be very helpful.
Yes. So just a follow-up question, Kiran. So since you work with the enterprise side of folks who are who don't just have a single package, right? So they have packages coming in from multiple vendors, they're built using different technologies, some in Java, some in .NET or whatnot, right? So you never know, right? So, is there a common, or a common set of, challenges that you actually, hear from customers when they actually want to make this transition? Is there anything that strikes out that you can share with us today?
Yeah, so the scenario changes when we talk about the package engineers. First of all, we need to understand they don't have the source code. So they have the packages that they would have got from their software vendor. So the first thing that they would do with these packages, they would go through a typical repackaging process or the conversion process, what we call, right, where they take either an MSI or EXE that they would have got from a vendor and try to convert it to MSIX, right? Now, one big challenge that I generally hear from customers is with respect to signing. While it might be a very common practice in the developers community to sign a package before they ship it, but I don't see that as a very common practice in the packaging community, right? So this whole thing is, first of all, new, and it also sometimes looks like an overhead, and there are a lot of questions that why should I even sign the package, and how do I sign this package? So that is one common challenge that I hear a lot. And like Tim mentioned in his previous comments, the various advantages of signing and the various advantages of adding this additional security layer on the MSIX and how it makes your package. So these are the kind of answers we generally discuss with our customers to help them understand how signing is very important. Now, other factors are, certain aspects of a package which are not supported in MSIX yet. Up until, I think it was 2104, where services were supported, but before that, Windows services were not supported. So that was, again, one common question that we heard from our customers. Hey, I know this package has services, but I read somewhere that MSIX doesn't support services. So this was another common question that we heard, or a challenge that we heard. And today, I'm very happy that Microsoft introduced support for services, and a couple of others. And also one question that I hear, not very frequently, but sometimes, is about support for drivers. That they know there are some drivers, and today MSIX doesn't support drivers. So I think these are some questions that I hear when I generally have any conversation with our customers who are primarily on the packaging team.
Good. Thank you, Pierre. So go ahead, Tim. So you had something to add?
Yeah, I just kind of want to tag on to some of what Vara was talking about for folks that don't necessarily have plans to move to MSIX today, and I think there's still a lot that's valuable in reading and understanding this book. And the biggest reason for that is that there are also things that are happening over time in the operating system platform itself that's changing, and Microsoft is changing the way we do things. And so as you go through this book, it's going to show you the things that you're going to need to do to run in MSIX. But quite frankly, a lot of those things are things that you're going to have to eventually change anyway. One of those big things that we sort of barely touched on was the bit about an application that wants to write data files down, whether it's configuration or anything else. How you do that, where you put that information is really changing. because people don't just live on one machine anymore. And we have to adjust the way we build our programs. And you're going to have to look at that stuff. And I think the book provides a good framework to look at that. Even if you end up deciding, I'm not going to go to MSIX today, you can start working on those things, because those are things that are still going to work in your existing product. And you're going to need to make those changes eventually. So it's the right time to be looking at those things and understanding them now.
Right. So this is for you, Tim, latching on to what you said, right? So, things are changing, things are evolving, and, with Windows 11 also coming in, and, there's of course a need to, come up with newer technologies for sure, right? But, if you consider MSI, which today is, the golden standard for installation on Windows, right? So, where do you see MSI standing? Do you think there is any future for MSI, maybe 3 years down the line or 5 years down the line? If you're a betting person, would you bet, Microsoft will ever kill MSI?
Predicting what Microsoft will do is always a challenge. I think it would be very hard for it to just go away in any short period of time. Particularly, I think about things like drivers, which, if for nothing else, we're going to need MSIs for those things for a while. At some point, is Microsoft going to come up with a great way to do that, and we don't need the MSI? Yeah, perhaps they will, and then maybe it can go away. But I think there is so much software that's out there. There's so much legacy behind that that you don't have to worry about it going away today. But I think you're going to be better off getting into the newer technologies and MSIX in the future. So, don't wait forever.
Right. Thank you. All right. So here's a question to Banna. So, Banna, you have been an application developer for, God knows how many years now. So you have, built several C, C++ apps, and, bulk of these are, building an MSI eventually. So is there anything that you'd like to share with us on, if I have an MSI and want to make this transition, where do I start? How do I start?
Actually, we in the book, actually, we covers how we are doing MSI installation. What will happen during the MSI installation, like especially when we register file type association, or what we have to do during when we deploy a Windows services, or when we register a Windows fonts, or even when we register a COM component. All these things we captured what is happening in a traditional Windows installer, and the corresponding how we can achieve all those things in a MSI's package. What need to be done, what kind of extension we need to add to the Apex manifest file. Same way, even we in case of MSI, we covered what information is available in which table, and correspondingly how we can achieve all those things in an MSIX manifest file. So one more thing I want to make your attention is that actually whenever in existing software, right, when we execute, that will be running in a system. There is a difference in case of MSI's packages. So in case of MSI's package, when we run an application, it will be running in an MSI's container. That lead to some kind of situation where we need to apply some kind of remediation actions, especially the application is trying to write some as Tim mentioned, like especially that application try to write log files or some settings. So it's not allowed to write into the installation folder. All those things we need to either we need to modify the applications, or we have to use we have to get the help of platform support framework. There we have a lot of software component to detour. We usually do file redirection fix up to detour the file creations, and we have a lot of other fix ups like environment variable fix up, and we have a fix up to dynamic library fix up. All those things will help to without changing the application code. I think that's all. I think especially we need to see what we need to assess the MSI first. Actually, what MSI tables covers, what kind of what it is done during the installation, and we have to correspondingly we have to identify how we can achieve that in MSI manifest file, and we need to add all those kind of extension and we need to update all those fields with the corresponding informations.
Right. Thanks. And just to add a little more to what you said, right? I think as Tim also was touching base on, technologies take time to evolve. So whatever the shortcomings of MSIX are today, I am pretty sure that Microsoft's actually working on them to bridge whatever gaps there are. So thanks, Banna, for your response. And I'd like to ask a question on something similar on what Banna responded, because Banna talked about various aspects of an MSI, and one of the biggest things is custom actions, right? So back when MSI was born, it was supposed to be a much more cleaner technology than scripted solution, right? Scripted installer. But then pretty soon, MSI started to evolve, and people wanted to run a script, during the course of the installation. And what started as a boon, immediately turned into a curse with people trying to abuse custom actions a lot and not cleaning up a lot of files, that leave a lot of residue in the file system. So, Kiran, in your experience, right? So, how does custom actions come into the way of my journey to actually move on to MSIX? I mean, if I have tons of custom actions, can I just make this transition, or should I just make a permanent decision not to move to MSIX at all?
Very good question, and a very common question that we hear a lot, because we know that custom actions are used very, very frequently in packages. And like you said, Venkat, it started off as a boon, but I think it's then later it got into a point where it started getting used to do certain things that were outside the scope of MSI. So that kind of started leaving some residues behind when the package was uninstalled or the application was uninstalled. Now, one thing I very clearly remember when Microsoft introduced MSIX was it's going to be a clean uninstallation, 100% clean uninstallation. Now, let's imagine a case of custom action and then talk about clean uninstallation. I think both of those cannot exist together. I think it was deliberate decision by Microsoft not to support custom actions. So it's unfortunate, but that is the truth, that MSIX don't support custom actions today. You will have to look at other ways of how do you want to bring that functionality that you would have that you currently achieve using custom actions into MSIX. Now, there is one way maybe you can try is a partial script fix-up. So that is one fix-up where it allows you to run a partial script. So that could be one good workaround for some of the custom actions. Otherwise, you might have to drop most of your custom actions and look at other ways. Tim, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think when we take a look at the way people have been using custom actions, a lot of it is to sort of do a decision process of, based on what I have on the machine, what do I put? And I think there are, when we look at this packaged environment, you pretty much want to build your installer to have everything that you need, and you always put it down there. So a lot of those needs go away. There's always going to be a need to do some type of customization as part of putting the thing down. And that might be, needing to be able to inject a license key or whatever. But, those are the simpler things. I think the scripting case sort of covers those for you. It'll be a little bit different the way you do it, but you can still get the same effect. Right.
So there's a question coming in. I'd like to request Tim if you can take that question. I think it is coming as a follow-up to what Banna said about if I want to write a file locally to my installation folder, I'll probably not able to write it. Right? So the question is on similar lines. I think it's from our user here, Jackie. And the question goes like this. So if I have an application which requires HKLM keys, then it can't be made into an MSIX. Are there any challenges here?
Okay, so if we're talking about the application providing registry information, whether it's HKLM or HKCU, that is possible for you to do there in the package, and you just deliver it. You deliver it in a slightly different form. Rather than have it in the MSI table to put down, you're going to create a registry DAT file that has the settings that you want in it, and just include that in your package. If the user in running the applications needs to modify registry items, they're able to modify items that are under the HKey current user branch, but not the HKey local machine branch. So if you need the ability, which you probably shouldn't have today anyway, because usually that's locked down in an MSI perspective. But so if you have anything that requires that type of writing, you probably want to just move it into the HKey current user case anyway. And keep in mind that the MSI deployment technology is always a per user install anyway. So the concept of a machine install kind of goes away. So it makes sense to just move those things over as part of your migration.
All right. So, my follow-up question there, Tim. So, what's your take on MSIX being a per user install or per machine install? So, what do you think is the right thing to have for a deployment technology?
I think per user is really the way things have been going. Even in the multi-user environment, such as the remote desktop servers, or whatever you want to call that today, the multi-user operating system, it becomes much less common to want to deploy software to a machine. Almost all of my customers are doing it to a user on that machine, whether it's a single user or multi-user machine. And we look at the entire consumer market, it really is a per user kind of thing, because the user and the machine is the same thing. So simplifying that model and just making everything per user makes a lot of sense.
One advantage that I see with per user type of installation is your user don't have to have elevated privileges to install a package. So that is generally a case in an enterprise where I, as a user on my laptop, would not have admin access. So installing a package in the per user context makes it a lot easier for deploying the software.
Yeah, right. Thanks, Kiran. And back to Banna. So Banna, you come from the software vendor side, it's like Kiran. So a lot of users we talk to or we work with are used to using MSI, and they have tons of configurations done in the installation panels that takes a lot of inputs and whatnot. So, but MSIX, comes with this, pretty bland view of, just click to install and, click to launch the application. That's all, right? So what are your views on, use cases, of users trying to, customize the, experience itself?
Yeah, we have seen a lot of existing installer get user input while installing the application. So currently, the custom installation wizards are not supported in the MSIX as of now. We have to wait and see if Microsoft would support that in the future. However, the first time configuration can be achieved with the help of PSF PowerShell scripting. With the PSF PowerShell scripting, we can copy PowerShell script file, and we can configure that to run while starting the application through the PSF launcher. There's some additional settings also. We can do something like while starting, there's a whatever the script we configured to execute while starting the application, there we can configure to run once and wait parameter. That will ensure that the script is getting executed before launching the applications. And that's where we can ensure. That's a kind of workaround I'm suggesting. As of now, there's no straightforward solution as of now from Microsoft to customize the installations. This is a workaround with the help of platform support framework PowerShell scripting option. We can execute some PowerShell before starting the applications, and we can configure to execute only once. Apart from that, we can use modification package. Modification package, we can change something. One software we install the main package as the enterprise uses. Usually we'll do they customize the installation. Likewise, we can create a modification package at the user end, and they can customize from their end. We in our book we also cover how to customize using the PowerShell scripting in chapter 4 in the section 3.5. We talks about how to customize the installation MSIX installation with the help of PowerShell scripting.
That's good. So I have a question too.
By the way, just if I could follow up on that, although the support in there is to run a PowerShell script, it can be an EXE. So that so what we're really talking about is just changing the experience to the end user of I configure while I install to I get installed, and now the first time I run it, I get this configuration. And so you take that logic out of what you were doing in the installer, and you can still you can put that in a PowerShell script, but you can also put it in an EXE with a GUI to make that experience great for the end user. It's just another separate component that you would include, and it would just occur the first time they run the application. They can configure it, and then it's gone. And I think that's fine. End users will be happy with that.
So I know, Tim, you do a lot of consulting and training for users as well who are into the application packaging space, or making this decision to move on to MSIX, right? So are there any other common use cases where your users actually come to you and asking for best practices to move on to PSF and whatnot? But what are the primary use cases why someone would want to run some first run configuration?
Usually it is either some type of licensing thing. So they need to enter some licensee keys to prove that they own the software and allow it to run. And the other is configuration for external things. So a lot of times we'll have a piece of software and we're going to use it in different environments. Let's say different back-end databases. And so you're going to have dev, prod, test type of environments. You want to have one package and point it to those different places. So one way to do that in the MSIX world is through this type of first run scripting thing we talked about. And the other is the other one that we talked about there of the modification package. So we first have our base package, and then we create a separate package that has that configuration. And we provide a nice, easy way to create that. And then those two get tied together, and it acts as sort of an overlay on top of whatever package you have. And so we can have these different configurations, just apply them as necessary. So both of those are good ways to solve the problem. The modification package probably requires a little more knowledge of MSIX to be able to pull that one off. And the scripting is easier to do straight out of the box for most people.
Right. All right. Thank you. Let me go back to what I asked. Common question. Because MSIX is now open to traditional Win32 apps, and all of these Win32 apps, the bulk of these traditional Win32 apps, it's very likely to have some COM components, right? So, Vara, can you share some insights on how COM and MSIX actually play well with each other? Are there any challenges? How easy is it for a software which is using COM components to migrate to MSIX?
Yeah, Ankit. In traditional world, COM components have been around for a while. When it comes to distributing them, so in general, Windows installer setups would use either self-registration or COM extraction methods in order to register and install them. So these data, this registration data gets stored in the COM specific tables in MSI database. But when it comes to MSIX, so it all depends on how this particular COM component is bundled within the package and how it can be accessed. If COM component is internally used within the container, then there is nothing to do in the manifest file. So just adding the traditional registration data to the package hive should be sufficient. But only drawback is the clients outside of the package, they'll not be able to use this COM component. if this COM component needs to be exported outside the package, then there's a concept called COM extensions. So with that, so that needs to be declared in the manifest file. So these registrations would go to catalog, and through that, object activation will take place. And there are vendor tools in the market that does this job automatically, but there are still, it's all based on MSI data. Just read the data tables and or capture the calls, and it's just just fill the entries in the manifest. So, but there are limitations with that. So this book will cover those limitations and restrictions for the COM usage. And apart from that, so as a developer, so for a developer, so it would be good to know what their MSI package contains. So for example, let's say there are different registration methods, and there's different ways of bundling the component, like in proc and out of proc server. And there are a few things, advanced topics like custom marshalling and COM emulations and COM object emulations. These are all, I don't think the tooling available in the market, they should be able to handle all these topics. So this book covers most of the aspects of COM, and it actually talks about traditional MSI and the tables used to store this data, and as well how these things that the content in the table are mapped to a manifest. That's all.
Okay. Right. Thanks for that insight. So I think the per user and permission has struck a chord with our audience today, and there are similar questions on the user versus machine. So there's one particular question from Brian. If you're tending towards per user installs, what about when you need to operate on services which are HKLM and generally per machine? Tim, would you like to share your thoughts on that?
Sure. When you have an MSIX package that includes a service, that service ends up getting installed natively on the operating system the same way it does today, even though it's inside your MSIX package. So when we earlier talked about how we get these per user installs and there's no UAC prompt and things like that, the exception to that rule is when you have a service, because then there does need to be elevation so that service can get natively installed. And basically, the magic with that, you don't have to worry about HKLM and all of that. That stuff, it's there, it works. If you have multiple users installing the same application, the MSIX technology is going to detect the services already there, so it's not going to install it again. So we don't have those types of conflicts as well. Another thing that I should probably mention is that although MSIX is primarily per user oriented in terms of install, there is a concept of a, oh God, I've even forgotten the name of it now. But there is a way to sort of pre-install the application for any user on the box. So it is a different way to do that installation. And it basically says anytime somebody logs in, if they don't have the application, give it to them. In fact, many of the standard apps that you have on your Windows system that came from Microsoft that are UWP or MSIX oriented today, those are apps that are actually installed that way. So it's called pre-provisioned. That was the name I was trying to remember. So you do a pre-provisioned install, and it's there in the OS. And when the user logs in, it just gets added into them. So it's still a per-user install, but you can get that effect of installing to the machine level from a production standpoint of how you put it down.
I think that's great to know, Tim, because there's one more question on similar lines. I mean, it's from Brian, which goes something like this. Sorry, this is from Gino. And a lot of our products are enterprise applications, and so they are per machine. So that does mean MSIX is not a viable alternative for us. So, Gino, I think Tim has covered that in a bit. Where there's an alternative way of deploying these applications as pre-provisioned, so they're available to all the users per user. Thanks, Tim. Even I didn't know that. How we can actually mimic this concept of per user to a permission by pre-provisioning. Thank you. All right. So I got one question for Banna. So initially, Banna, when we started talking about MSIX and whatnot, right? So when we try to package a few applications, what we saw was that some of the right-click menus or context menus were just simply missing, right? So in your experience with MSI and MSIX, are there any practices that like to share with our audience to say this is what you want to do, this is what you shouldn't do, or you should avoid in your MSI? Go ahead.
Yeah. Actually, we also seen that in the traditional installer, when we install, we get the file explorer context menu. Once we migrate to that to MSI's package, that context menu is not coming up. So in traditional installer, in existing installer, we can add context menu either by specifying the file table, file type associations, or using a shell extension DLL. The context menu created using file type association is static information will be available in the registry or in the MSI table like prog ID. But in the case of shell extension DLL, context menus are created dynamically by loading a in-prog com server DLL. Usually, the context menus created using the shell extension DLL will be missed while migrating or converting to a MSI's package because of its dynamic nature. So, in order for the shell to recognize and register the extension, we need to modify the package manifest file. So MSI's come up with an extension called Windows File Explorer Context Menu and Windows File Explorer Classic Context Menu Handler. This application extension will help to register these kinds of File Explorer Context Menu context menu extensions. And as I mentioned, here is getting involved a COM DLL. Actually, File Explorer, Windows File Explorer will load the COM DLL, and from that on the fly it will generate the context menus. So we need to mention in the Apex manifest file, we need to mention about the COM DLL also. So there were one more extension called COM server. So there we need to mention about the COM's DLL, and we have to mention about the class ID of the context menu handler that implement the Windows Explorer interfaces. So that when the applications, once we registered all these extensions, then Windows Explorer can load this extension DLL and show up the context menu.
Right. Thanks, Mangan. So, yeah, thank you. And here is one question from Rakesh. Rakesh is asking, what will be the role of application packager in per user installation with MSIX? Kiran, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to assume that Rakesh already has a package which is doing a per user installation. Rakesh, if that is not the correct assumption, you could rephrase the question, but I'm going to answer considering that as the question. Well, it makes it a lot easier because MSIX is for per user. And if you have a package, let's say MSI or EXE, because we're talking about application packager here. So let's say you have MSI or EXE, and if you know already that it's a per user based package, then all you have to do is convert the package to MSIX. You could use tools like Admin Studio, which could help you do the conversion and also sign the packages. And eventually you'd get MSI. And since there are no components or registries going in the machine context or getting installed in the machine area, I think it should be fine. Your MSIX, the output MSIX should be absolutely fine for you to deploy.
All right. Thank you, Kiran. Thanks for taking that. And we are almost on, closing the list, 4 minutes short. So, we got one more question, I think, from, or Rakesh trying to clarify that the current installations are all permission installations, Kiran. So, since we are almost on top of the hour, I'd like to provide some, closing comments, and we'll wrap this, meeting up. This has been a productive discussion, and thanks a lot for our audience, for being engaging and asking a lot of questions. Do share your feedback with us. Please, respond back to the email originally you have, or write to us at support@revenera.com or support@flexera.com for any further questions you have.